This hour, President Trump is traveling to Wisconsin today, pushing for the passage of the USMCA trade deal. This on the heels of the president announcing he will not put in place an executive order to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. Instead, he said he'll gather citizenship information from the data the government already has. The president making the comments after the White House social media summit yesterday.
I'm hereby ordering every department and agency in the federal government to provide the Department of Commerce with all requested records regarding the number of citizens and non-citizens in our country. We have great knowledge in many of our agencies. We will leave no stone unturned. Ultimately, this will allow us to have an even more complete count of citizens than through asking the single question alone. It will be, we think, far more accurate.
Joining me right now is the counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Good morning.
So what about this new idea to get the information in terms of how many people in this country are illegal versus legal? Do you think the president's going to be able to get that data from the existing data in government?
Yes, we do. It's just unfortunate that the detractors to that inclusion of that question tied us up in meritless litigation for so long. They're still yet to issue a compelling reason as to why we in this country can't ask, are you a U.S. citizen, when the census takers knock on your door. The census projects, Maria, that they can gather citizenship information for about 90% of the country through other means. And I think what the president did yesterday is important because, again, it takes the obstacles away from data sharing amongst the different departments and agencies, and it compels and encourages those departments and agencies to share the information so that we can get this information. This information is important for any number of public policy issues. I take objection to those who are screaming, as they usually do, that you're deterring people from being in the census, from complying with the census. Lots of people already politely decline. I know people who say you have a right to know how many people are in the house and if they're under 18 or over 18 and nothing else. But think of all the invasive, intrusive questions that federal government questionnaires ask already, including the census, that many people don't want to answer, feel uncomfortable answering. But they do that for reasons that this government has said we spend $20 billion or so. The president has remarked that the decennial census is an important constitutionally prescribed exercise. Yeah. So why not get it right? Why not make the census responsive to the changing lifestyles or changing demography of a nation?
Yeah, it's another indication of this pushback on whatever the president wants to do from his critics in the Congress, the Dems. Let me ask you about the crisis at the border.
And they're saying he caved, which he didn't. And I want to make two things very clear quickly. The president didn't cave. He's finding other means to gather the information, seeing that it was tied up in meritless litigation. And number two, too many people who just play lawyers and constitutional experts on TV aren't reading Chief Justice Roberts' opinion very closely from the Supreme Court. He didn't raise a legal and constitutional impediment to this exercise, this inclusion of the question. He just didn't like the rationale and basically was leaving an opening, and I think the Department of Justice was trying to walk through that. But time is of the essence, and there are different ways to gather this information, and this administration will.
All right, we'll watch that. Meanwhile, you are headed now to the southern border with the Vice President, Mike Pence, and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee today. Tell me what you're expecting. We know U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is also planning this roundup of thousands of undocumented immigrants across the country on Sunday. So first, tell me about the border. What do you think you're going to see? And when are we going to see an end to these loopholes that basically encourage all of these people to come to the southern border?
All great questions, Maria. I would start the answer by pointing out CNN poll of all outlets on July 2nd showed that whereas 45% of Americans said there was a, quote, crisis at the southern border in January, it's now up to 74%. So people are seeing the images. You got to witness it firsthand. Yeah. I will do that today. Chairman of the Judiciary Senate Committee, Lindsey Graham, invited all members of the committee, a bipartisan delegation. Could have been going and should be going, but every Democrat now has pulled out. Some declined from going from the beginning. A few said that they would go and are now not on the manifest. I got word early this morning. That's really a shame. They're unserious and unseemly about fixing the border crisis it's easier to do that, to scream and cry here in Washington, D.C. than it is to go look for themselves.
Yeah.
But I think the Vice President and Chairman Graham are leading this delegation, leading this visit, so we can see for ourselves. And let me also say that that Kevin McAleenan, our acting secretary, and others are reporting that some of the crossings are down, but we're on track for 1 million illegal crossing, 1 million people presenting themselves at the border this year if we don't get it under control. Now, I think the ground has softened a bit. You have more Americans calling it a crisis. You have more people who denied it was a crisis now saying it is. And most importantly, just 2 weeks ago, you had the Congress starting to do their jobs, Maria, by passing $4.6 billion in humanitarian aid.
Right.
Every Democrat, with the exception of those four, the squad that doesn't do squat, if you don't count magazine covers and Twitter all day, they're the ones who I think are incurring the ire of Speaker Pelosi and others. And that started because they are the only four Democrats to deny any kind of aid. They voted against the Democratic bill, and only 95 Democrats voted against the aid package that actually passed. Why is that important? Because you're going from manufactured outrage about a, quote, manufactured crisis to actually committing billions of dollars to it. This will help, but we still have a national security crisis. We have to secure our southern border. The president mentioned just last night, that people are working on Mexico as a third safe country. They've been helping us a great deal with their southern border. And so that we can help with their northern border and our southern border.
Right.
So there's so much work to do. We'll be talking to folks at Customs and Border Protection. We'll be talking to people who are on the front lines. What else do they need? And I want to see for myself. I'm happy to join the senators and the vice president today at the border.
Yeah. Well, I think that those guys and gals are working so hard, and unfortunately, they are being pushed away to leave their post at the border to go take care of children who are sick and bring kids to hospitals. Because what I saw when I went there was incredible. All of the kids being put in these dangerous situations. But when AOC went there, she had all other ideas. Are you going to be able to see the detention centers where AOC said they were drinking water from the toilet bowl? Now AOC calling Nancy Pelosi a racist, Kellyanne? Real quick.
Yeah, it's getting hot over there. So that's been completely denied and debunked. She has no proof for making such an outrageous claim. Anybody who repeats it without evidence is sharing in her lying and crying about it. But just this week, that same member of Congress told the New Yorker radio show that we should just eliminate all of DHS. Maria, these are just unserious people who don't have the facts. Eliminating DHS, which was created in response to the 9/11 tragedies in this nation, it also would eliminate FEMA, Secret Service, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, CPB, you name it.
Oh,
so this is just not even serious. Look what, and let me just end with this, because the vice president was there yesterday to witness the offloading of $500 million worth of cocaine, the largest seizure ever by our brave U.S. Coast Guard. That cocaine that was seized is because this president's policies are getting tough on the border and tough on drugs. That $500 million worth of cocaine and some of the marijuana now won't make it into our coworkers, our communities, and our kids. And we got to keep it out. And the president is very serious about keeping the drugs out. A lot of what I'm doing today at the border has to do with being the point person in the White House for the president's combating the drug crisis. And we're making tremendous strides. We have to keep this out of our community. So all the people who denied taking this trip today are they're just communicating they're not serious. And if I were the Democrats, I'd come to the table on DACA too, because the Supreme Court has committed to take it up in its next term. And no other than President Obama said, hey, I'm putting this law in place, but I don't think it's legal.
Yeah.
It's probably not legal. That's probably the best that the anti-DACA people will say.
Yeah.
So if I were the Democrats, I'd get more serious about immigration reform overall. The public opinion is on the president's side with respect to this being a crisis.
Well, the people understand the issues. I agree with that for sure. You've got the DACA issue, but then you've got USMCA, which we'll see if Nancy Pelosi brings it to the floor in the fall.
The president's on the road for that today. She's getting a lot of pressure, I believe, from those 31 Democrats who are representing districts that Trump and Pence won in 2016. And the USMCA, the vice president was out in California talking about that. This is great for farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, employers, employees. Let's modernize our trade agreements with Mexico and Canada. And let's get a vote on that. Let's get a vote on drug pricing. Let's do things in a bipartisan fashion. I think the humanitarian aid package was a great step forward in that regard.
Kellyanne, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
We will be waiting to hear your reaction to the border when you come back. Thank you.